Hey, 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 what's going on? Happy Thanksgiving, holidays, the whole nine. Hope everyone's doing good. Should have checked my surroundings. I got a bunch of junk around, but so be it. Uh, was killing this kombucha earlier. How's everybody doing? Gonna give people a chance to get into the room. Let me just let people know we're on here. Know a lot of people are still struggling with the itis. Just finished getting the turkey on, the whole nine, but I hope everyone's doing good. Want to talk about something that I've been meaning to talk about for a while. Like I have this list of topics that I keep meaning to do for live streams and I end up not doing them. And they start backing up and then I realized I saw this article today and it was a topic I've been meaning to talk about for a while and I thought this would be a good time to do it. Now, the article is not new. I just saw it today. It's from earlier in the year, I think. I'm gonna pull it up and we can take a look at it. But let me just let people know we're on here. Uh, but yeah, man, what's going on? How's everybody feeling? Let me know in the chat. Let's let people get in here. Also, share this on your social medias, on your YouTubes, all over the internet. Let people know we're up in here. But the article in question is about was Black Lives Matter a scam? And what's interesting about this is that it's a way late article. The article is October 22nd, 2022. So actually it's kind of new. It's only a month old. And I got to ask you, like, what's the point of bringing this up now? If I had the time, I would have prepared a whole timeline of the accusations against Black Lives Matter, but um, I didn't want to do that. And I didn't do that. I didn't have time, and I didn't want to because it would end up falling through the cracks. Me doing this article, but yeah, I want to talk about it because this has been an ongoing. One thing I will say, as far as timeline goes, there was an open letter done December 2020 about the lack of transparency in Black Lives Matter. And before that, there were other things as well. Uh, Lives Matter NYC had brought something up, but there had been a bunch of open letters to Black Lives Matter. The December 2021 was about 10 chapters, which is a whole 25% of their um, base um, complaining, right? So I'm gonna pull them up on the screen right now. We can do it in real time. Let's do it in real time, right? So check this out. I'm gonna share it real quick, and also hit the likes while you're in here. It takes 10 seconds. Hit the like, leave a comment. So December 2020, Black Lives Matter power grab sets off internal revolts. And this was shortly after the election, and the National was trying to get uh, into Biden's camp and get put on. And Alicia Garza and Patrice Cullors were really pushing to get in there. And it goes, the local open letter says, "We became chapters of Black Lives Matter as radical Black organizers embracing a collective vision for Black people, engaging in the protracted struggle for our lives against police terrorism." 10 local chapters wrote in an open letter last week. With a willingness to do hard work that would put us at risk, we expected that the central organization entity would support us chapters in our effort to build community. Then they complain about the lack of transparency over money the movement has raised and how chapters can access it. And this article is good because it brings up how this is not even new, even in 2020. Members have brought this up as early as 2016, and frustrated chapters planned to go public with their grievance months ago, but they were encouraged to wait and discuss the issue with Colors, the head of Black Lives Matter at the time, who bought herself all those houses. Uh, who bought herself those houses? Yeah, that's her. Those discussions were not productive, they say. We didn't have an opportunity to discuss nothing. Yane Ndengo, a lead organizer of Black Lives Matter, said. So then we asked questions that we are told no answers. Colors declined comment. And yeah, so it was nothing new. That was the BLM 10. So that, and since then, I think a lot of these places have seceded, separated themselves from the movement. Um, this happened as well. This is a little bit later. Let me present this one. Yeah, and share on Twitter, share on Facebook, text your friends, let them know we're up in here. Um, in 2021, Black Lives Matter Inland Empire announces break with BLM Global Network. Black Lives Matter Inland Empire, in an open letter last week, announced its departure from the cash-heavy Black Lives Global Network. Um, and they brought up the same stuff: the money raised, the lack of transparency, and it's like continuing to remain silent would be an act of betrayal. So said the use of the BLM name, which we believe was intended to unite our struggle, has been commodified and debased. It is now being used to sell products, acquire book deals, TV deals, and speaking engagement. We have no interest in these pursuits, and we are opposed to the movement to substitute black capitalism for white capitalism. It has become clear that the global network and certain figures have platformed our struggles with the sole purpose of exploiting our labor. So yeah, they brought that up. I mean, they still have their own problems. They're quoting Audre Lorde's "The Master's Tools," which is a ridiculous quote. And but I mean, it's better than nothing. The point is that it's I want to see if they change their name. So now it looks like they just changed the name to Inland Empire United, but it still seems so now it's called Inland Empire United, which I can respect. And that's another problem I want to bring up is how you have to give up the name. It's unavoidable if you want to speak about the corruption. Like, it doesn't matter how the movement started, you think, or if you think the local chapters are good. If the movement is tainted, that would be like a local church having jumped on Jim Jones um church's coattails because they thought Jim Jones was doing good work. And then after Jim Jones does the whole Guyana Kool-Aid thing, being like, oh hey, don't judge the local chapter by the originator and the national, because we did a lot of good work, but we still want to keep that name. It's like, why are you keeping that name? It's so tainted. It's a implicit endorsement. Like, why would you keep the name and then just keep complaining and attacking people when they bash Black Lives Matter, the national network? Like, every time somebody bashes Black Lives Matter, the national network, scammers, there's all these people always come up and it's like, well, I don't like this narrative because the local chapters do a lot of good work. And this article, we had New York Magazine article about them scamming came out, and we did shows on it on Champagne Sharks, call-in shows, and I saw other people discussing it on Twitter, and they would all keep coming at the author, and they tell the author, yo, I don't really appreciate this because it doesn't properly differentiate between the local chapters and the national. It's like that's the local chapter's fault. If you're planning to keep the same damn name as the scammers, and then you're gonna just start attacking and berating everybody for doing your job for you, which is differentiating yourself from the place you're named after. Like, and this is what I mean by like woke people have this modern woke people. The new definition of wokeness, the modern definition is I want to be able to do what I want when I want if it's self-serving, and it's your job to be waiting outside the window with a mattress every time I jump out the window. And if you're not ready with the mattress to save me from myself, you're oppressing me. And that's a perfect example. I'm going to keep the name, but I'm going to lecture everybody who doesn't take great pains to emphasize the footnote and to do all this heavy labor in their writing to point out that the local chapters are different and are, good. First off, how does a person know all the local chapters aren't corrupt? He can't investigate every single one. And also, like, why are you more upset about that than the fact that the main chapter was scamming? It's a big problem that I kind of have with this whole um and this is what we're going to talk about. That's because that's kind of become the new deflection is the local chapters, the local chapters, the local chapters. And I'm going to give you some more examples of that. And it's like this is exactly what it is. People, uh, no, moving for Black Lives. That's very complicated. Moving for Black Lives was always there. Moving for Black Lives was one of like the Soros umbrella names and the Ford Foundation type names, where there were a bunch of subgroups under Movement for Black Lives. And Movement for Black Lives was always there. And they were always kind of in bed with and cross pollinating with Black Lives Matter. And they're always creating and removing and reshuffling different organizations, closing and founding and refounding to keep the money and donations flowing. So Movement for Black Lives is kind of this umbrella organization of a bunch of sub organizations that all have white philanthropist money funding them, and it's very complicated. I talked about it in some of my previous videos during the pandemic, and it's too much to go into today, but that's not what it is. Yeah. And this is exactly what is going on. The people want to keep the name for the residual clout and they appeal to familiarity. You're exactly right. But they also want to attack the national chapter. They want to have their cake and eat it too. And you're going to have to make the sacrifice. Give up the name or whatever little clout, especially because that clout is going to dwindle anyway. So get out of the way now. You're just putting off a rebuilding you're going to have to eventually do anyway. You're going to have to rebuild off of that name because it's circling the drain more and more. It's going down the toilet. And you're just riding that name down the drain to get whatever little bit of leftover clout there is in a very short-sighted way. And it's not going to last anyway. You're going to have to it's going to do you more harm than good, and you're going to do you more harm than good, and you're going to have to basically start fresh, make the sacrifice, give up a short-term amount of clout for an avoidance of long-term pain and a gaining of long-term gain later. But let me just put this other thing up because I want to show how long this has been going on. This is going to relate to the article I'm eventually going to talk about. Black Lives Matter NYC published open letter criticizing NYC Pride, and that's from 2017. Actually, no, this is the wrong one. This isn't the one that talks about Black Lives Matter. New York was one of the first ones to have a problem with the main organization, but that's the wrong article. But yeah, the New York chapter brought up a whole bunch of issues as well. And I'm actually going to skip that because I'm going to go to the first one that brought up problems. This one was way ahead of the game. Um, Black Lives Matter Cincinnati was the first one to call out Black Lives Matter as scammers way before even the BLM 10. Um, they changed their name to something else and then they kind of disappeared. I was trying to get them on the show when the show first started, but their site is down, so it's hard for me to find. But let me just get this real quick. Unfortunately, yeah. So Black Lives Matter Cincinnati changed the name to REAL, and they did an open letter as well. Unfortunately, I can't find it anymore. But this was like 2017, I believe, to give you an idea how long it's been going on. Nobody reported on this. None of the white liberals, none of the black blue checks who were in bed with Black Lives Matter and working in the media. None of them talked about it. And this all brings us to the current article. I'm gonna pull it up now. And also, feel free to support us. Hit us with the super chat. Hit us with. Let me put the ways to support us on the screen. You can hit us all the ways on the bottom here: Venmo, PayPal, Patreon, subscription, or you can just hit that dollar sign at the bottom and show us some love. And if you do, we'll read your comment. So please do that. But check this out. Op-ed: Was Black Lives Matter a scam? And this is the part that really gives it away. This is a girl who's like very popular on Twitter. She goes by Shamgod on Twitter, SHAMGOD, and she's like a typical blue check. She's always towing whatever the blue check party line is, even though that's going to be a meaningless term soon. Now that um, Elon Musk has changed the procedure to get a blue check, but this part is the telling part. Op-ed: Was Black Lives Matter a scam? There has been widespread criticism of certain parts of BLM. Certain parts. It's the national organization by the founders. What do you mean, certain parts? That's very much burying the lead. That makes it sound like it's a little subsection. Like two out of the three people on the Black Lives Matter tax returns listed as officers. It only has three officers, and two of them been accused of multi-million-dollar fraud and appropriation. And it's like this is not certain parts. This is the heart of it. And but this is the part. How much of it should be dismissed? That part is very telling, and that is horrible journalism. That's just horribly biased. You should be talking about how much of it should be taken seriously. The question is very telling. It's leading off with the idea, of course, this is like largely a good thing or misunderstanding. Like, how much of this should be dismissed? And it's like, why are you starting with that? How much should be dismissed? Like, you should be starting with how serious is it? Like, it sounds like I know it sounds like uh narcissism, a small difference. No, sorry. I know it sounds like a distinction without a difference. What's the difference between how much of it should be dismissed versus how much of it should be taken seriously? But it shows where the baseline or the reflex is coming. The reflex is we have to downplay it. They would not phrase it like that for Sean King. I'm not saying I like Sean King. I think he's a scammer too. But my point is, these people don't like Sean King because he's not part of their clique or their crew. They can't really do quid pro quo or wet each other's beaks. He's not part of this specific mafia. They can't really wet their beak into his scams. That's the only real reason they don't like Sean King and his scams. Because the BLM national scams are way bigger than Sean King's. But it's part of their ecosystem, right? And it's like, yeah. So you think it's pedantry. I'm guessing you're saying my distinction is pedantry. And you're welcome to that. You're welcome to that interpretation. But I personally don't think it is pedantry. I think there is a difference, a meaningful difference, but it's like a slip of the tongue type of difference. Like it's showing. Oh, okay, I misunderstood. All right, them. Yeah. Well, no, I don't think it's pedantry on their part either, because pedantry means that you're making like a big deal out of nothing. I think this is specific propaganda by them. Like this is them very much trying to play a sleight of mouth, like a sleight of hand with their mouth. It's like they're trying to subconsciously prime you to dismiss. Like they're saying, like with Sean King, they would not say how much should be dismissed. They'd be like, how can we stop him? That'll be the subtitle, or when is enough enough, or whatever. You know, like this is very much showing where the bias is, and that says it all. But yeah, she's always, and this is the problem with a lot of the modern blue check writing, whether it's nonfiction journalism or whether it's fictional media. And for them, it's all the same people, because everybody who's doing nonfiction journalism as a modern black blue check is trying to get into movies and novels and stuff. And the movies and novelist people are always writing op-eds and doing reporting, and they all fancy themselves activists. So yeah, and they all dabble in academia. So there's like four pillars of modern black blue checkness. There's academia, there's um, fiction writing, where there's novels or movies or TV shows. There's the nonfiction slash journalism pillar, and then there's the activism. And they all float between all four, and they don't really take any hustle seriously. There's people back in the days, they were a nonfiction journalist. They were that for life, and they honed their craft primarily in that. And they might have dabbled in other things, but they chose a lane. If you were a novelist, you were pretty much a novelist, and you stayed in that, and you dabbled in screenwriting and whatever, but you had your main lane. If you're an academic, but now it's like Black Lot, now Lovecraft Country. Two of the people who write on it are like tenured Yale academic uh, professors, and they're represented by agents and work at HBO under a contract. You have people like Professor Crunk, who's an academic but is on a talking head on media and doing op-eds all the time. And like that's why the term multi-hyphenate is so huge. Everybody is just has a finger in every pie. It's like a jack of all trades, master of none. But one thing they all have in common is they all have the same cynical black capitalist self-serving worldview, which is all the work primarily exists to do self esteem management. That's the key term, self esteem management. Everything is self esteem management. And then you can break it down. Like self esteem management gets broken down to two things: affirming me or people who look like me or share my identity or are part of my tribe. So I kind of bask in the reflected glory, as in, like, if this person, if I can bask in the reflected glory in any way, if they reflect on me in any way, because they share my identities, they run with me, they went to the same schools, they live the same life. I need them to be affirmed, because them being affirmed helps me be affirmed. So it's an affirmation of myself, either directly or by proxy. And that's another reason why they have to kind of protect the whole Black Lives Matter construct, because that's part of their tribe. And they've also been shown fucking with them heavy, so they got to like minimize it. They have to isolate the disease as much as they can. So now Patrice Cullors has kind of become expendable, but even then, they don't come at it with both guns blazing like they do Sean King. But they want to kind of isolate the rot there and kind of cut it off, and be able to let the local chapters and a couple of other people on national and people like Melina Abdullah kind of live, so that they can continue to thrive off that ecosystem and scam. They can't just admit, hey, this thing is too rotten that the whole entirety must be discarded, including the name, including the local chapters. Yeah. So yeah, validating one's own echo chamber is a great way to put it. So that's one half of the self-esteem management, affirming self either directly or through proxies, and two, tearing down critics and professed enemies and people outside the tribe. So if your work tears down like trolls, hoteps, whatever they're calling them this day, um, black male studies, white women, alt right, then by inference, it's boosting their tribe. So it's like, you know, they always make sure to have in their work a bunch of hit jobs on their enemies. If it's fictional, they have characters who are basically caricatured versions of the enemies who their proxy versions, like a white version of this, because we're talking about a lot recently, is the show She-Hulk. And the whole show is about bashing trolls and having the She-Hulk, who's a clear insert for the writers, be the one who's always taking him down and everything. And like this is like a black version of that. These people are all kind of the same, no matter what their color. One thing I always say is that blue checks are more like each other than they are like any of their other identities. So white blue checks, black blue checks, Asian blue checks, feminist blue checks, they have more in common with each other than the white blue check has with other white people, the black blue check has with other black people, the female blue check has with women. Like it's, I think, a stronger identity to these people than most of anything else that they list as an identity. But let's get into this article, and just the subheading. You see how much I have to say about it. It drives me nuts. So this is the current strategy. Okay, the artist formerly known as Kanye West has endured sustained criticism ever since debuting his White Lives Matter T-shirt. So this came out because, and this is why she's being forced to talk about it. Candace Owen is doing this thing called, and I think Candace Owen, by the way, stole work from me. Check this out. Um, Let me take a quick break to show this out. So she did this. She did this. She's doing a documentary now, and it's gaining traction. It's about how Black Lives Matter was a scam. Now they pretty much they pretty much gave her the ammunition because all these people would dismiss and minimize and ignore all these claims. If you've been following this channel, if you search Champagne Sharks Black Lives Matter cash grab, we laid this out a long time ago, way before a New York Magazine article. Um, they made it so that the right wing could spread their version of this because they wouldn't be reporting it themselves. So if you look here, if we check it out, Candace Owens' thing is called "The Greatest Lie Ever Sold," and it's about all the money that that Black Lives Matter got. And if you notice, she has there a Black Power fist with cash in it. And if you go in, I'm gonna keep zooming in so you can see it. You see the fist and the cash there? Y'all see it right there in the thumbnail, right? So check this out. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm seeing things and whatever. It's not exactly the same. They colored the money black. I colored it green, but I don't know. That's a bit funny style to me. But I mean, at the same time, it's not un- unthinkable that they came up with it naturally. So who knows? Who knows? Who knows? But yeah, we talked about this for like a long time. But now, um, Candace Owen is doing her thing on it, and even then, they would probably keep ignoring it because she's still considered a right wing troll. But Kanye partnered with her, made the White Lives Matter shirt, and he started repeating some of the stuff that I was saying and she's saying and all these people are saying. So now he's really mainstreaming the grift. He's really putting it on Front Street because he's got a huge platform. And a lot of people who aren't necessarily right wing fuck with Kanye West, or at least listen to what he says. Like once he says anything, it becomes think piece fodder outside of their circles. So now they all have to scramble because they're part of the Black Lives Matter ecosystem. That's why this article is finally coming out. Like, no matter how much stuff was coming out, including New York Magazine, these people weren't saying anything. This is like 4 or 5 years of accusations, plausible accusations, and these people dismissed it all. But so now she's got to bring it up because of Kanye West, and because by implication it indicts her whole project. And I went to her Twitter account, and maybe she periodically deletes. I don't know. I can't say she's deleting it because of this, but I searched her name and Black Lives Matter, and there was like nothing. Like maybe she deleted all her Twitter history up until a point, and this just happened to be caught in it. But I find it hard to believe she only started tweeting about Black Lives Matter now that it became a scam. But that's like the only type of quotes from her I can see on it. Post scam, where she's on the right side of things, right? Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. This could totally be possible for sure. Um yeah, so right wingers, because libs and leftists allow them to control the narrative, will say all social justice would be grifters and we got to do it right. Yeah, so it's like um they keep saying, "Oh, this is a right wing narrative or whatever," or "This is a right wing." Yeah, but the right wing is able to do this because you're not doing your job as journalists. You're trying to be cronies and friends with these people. So yeah, it's a right wing takedown job because the right wings are the only ones who are going to be able to do it. And by letting the right wing own this narrative, they can introduce as much bad faith as they can. Like I totally agree that the right wing is going to abuse this narrative and expand it to unfair bad faith places. But you could have gotten in front of this for years and sucked the wind out of their sails, and gotten your counter message out of there, and also preserved your own credibility, which is shot now. But um, it goes. Um, in response to the initial backlash over his sartorial decisions, Ye took to Instagram stories to address the backlash, posting, "Everybody knows that Black Lives Matter was a scam. Now it's over. You're welcome." What Ye is referring to is a Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation. Like, how bad is it when you, as a journalist, are behind Kanye West? Like you have to place it in Kanye West said, these people should have heard this from you first. If you're a Negro whisperer, if you're the one who's got your finger on the pulse of Black life and activism and accountability, they shouldn't. You shouldn't be forced into addressing this from Kanye West. Um, what Ye is referring to is the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation, which, according to its original three founders, began with a Facebook post and a digital presence, building the framework for a radical, anti-capitalist, leaderless platform that would begin to mobilize and expand after Michael Brown's murder in Ferguson, Missouri. Um, I'm just gonna jump ahead. Alicia Garza left the group's day-to-day operations in 2017, and fast forward to 2020, the Black Lives Matter phrase the co-founders popularized became a comprehensive term. It came to represent any and all organizing work in respect to the fight for any part of Black liberation, whether it be reformist or radical, or not in any way associated with the efforts of Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation. Now, this was interesting. Now these people are trying to make clear and foreground the fact that just because someone says Black Lives Matter at a protest doesn't mean that Black Lives Matter, the national organization, had anything to do with it. Like, it's just a phrase that coincidentally happened to be popularized by these people. But before, these people were all about taking credit for everything that happened by an activist or protests where people use the words Black Lives Matter protest. Like there was no being pedantic and nitpicking about letting people know, hey, just because people said Black Lives Matter this protest, our pals had nothing to do with it. This main organization had nothing to do with it. They were very happy to let people confuse what was on the ground, any place where the words Black Lives Matter is being said. They're happy letting people confuse that with the organization. And you know why? Because that confusion made them a magnet for donations and attention. You know what I'm saying? Like, if everyone thinks, oh man, Black Lives Matter is doing all this work, because every protest I see is called a Black Lives Matter protest. I got $1 million. I need to donate to somebody. Let me just donate it to these guys. They seem to be everywhere, you know? So, yeah. See, no, I disagree here. The right wing was going to criticize anyway, but they wouldn't be the only place to go to. Because myself, all the research I had to do, I had to go to right wing sources. I had to go to a tablet. I had to go to um, Washington Times, all these places, and then I had to struggle to then disaggregate the falsity from the truth. But I had to go to the New York Post. They broke all these things. They were way ahead of the curve and all this stuff, and I wouldn't have had to do that if, like, they were always going to make their attempt to say this, but they wouldn't own the narrative. Like, all that's on the other side is the New York Magazine article, but the right wing owns this topic. The four houses thing, Daily Mail and New York Post got a ton of circulation off of that. You know what I mean? And now you got to play catch up to fight the message, and the damage is done. You know, if they were able to run interference before, then Candace Owens' thing wouldn't seem like such a bombshell. You know, there's a lot of people to this day who don't understand what happened until they heard Kanye and Candace Owens say it. So the fury of young organizers in Minneapolis, which expanded nationally and then globally, became attributed to the Black Lives Matter movement, a distinction that would be useful if it were applied in practice. So now they want to make a urge to distinguish the movement from the national chapter. The corporate support in the months after Floyd's murder poured into Black Lives Matter global network filings. In 2020, the tax filings report the organization received over 90 million. The organization formally became an independent nonprofit that year, so it only became a nonprofit in 2020, which means that's why they had to give their tax returns in 2020. They never did before. The organization became an independent nonprofit that year, with Cutters announcing that she would be stepping into an executive director position in July. Now, because it only became a nonprofit in 2020, that 90 million is all we know about from 2020. We still have no idea how much they made when they were a for-profit and are allowed to hide their donations. So keep in mind that 90 million is probably a small minority of what they raised, even though it keeps getting brought up. Like, people think it's a lion's share, but it could be as much as 500 million. I think it's possible because they've been very prominent for like 6 years. So, like, let's say they made 90 million for all those years, or even less, but it could be as high as half a billion. It could be a quarter of a billion. I don't know. Let's say that the George Floyd year was an extra uh, powerful year of donations. Even if they made half that amount or a third of amount the other 5 years. So let's say the other 5 years they made a third of that, 30 million times 5, 150 million, add the 90, 240 million. So that's like about a quarter of a billion. So it's like, yeah, people get hung over the 90 million, but I think it's people should understand that is probably a fraction, I think, of what they actually got. Um, the individual chapters of BLM and other affiliates, however, had long been ringing alarm bells. Um, Now this is crazy. They've long been ringing alarm bells, and this is what these people do a lot, and I think it's very important to talk about. something they love to do. They do the intellectual or political equivalent of stealing your shit and then helping you look for it. Like they've been doing this thing lately where they're saying, "Hey, Black Lives Matter." It was queer and black women who were sounding the alarms on Black Lives Matter, the national organization, from the beginning. And it's like, what? Like people like us have been talking about these people being grifters forever. Um, Darren Seals, rest in peace, rest in power, has been talking about this from the beginning, and they called everybody who criticized Black Lives Matter and called them scammers and pointed out all this fuckery. They call them hoteps, misogynists, dusties, ashy, women haters, homophobes. They were all attacking Darren Seals. They were attacking people like us. All these people on the internet, they were calling them names or whatever. And anytime you criticize them, they'd be like, "You just hate black queer women," or "Black queer women are fighting on the front lines for you." Now, after all that, rather than say we were wrong, you guys were right. Now they're saying, now they're laughing at us, saying, "Oh, you guys are late to the party. We've been talking about this." And it's like, no, we've been talking about this way before any of y'all, way before even the local chapters started talking about it. But again, that's the self-esteem management, the image protection. They always have to paint themselves as um flawless, untouchable, on the right side of things. It's really, really, really shameless how they do it. Give me a second. I want to pull up an actual um example of this. But yeah, they lie, lie, lie all the time. Um let me see if I can. Okay, here we go. I found it. I thought it'd take longer, but check this out. This is a perfect example. This guy is one of those people who runs with that whole crowd. He's always running with the fake activist and everything. He goes by the name Damani. And this is a perfect example of this narrative that has been started, right? So check it out. Someone did the usual thing. This blue chick did the usual thing. Kanye is just a microcosm of the black cishet men whose revolutionary ideas only exist within the framework of white supremacy, patriarchy, and capitalism. They don't want to upend the system. They want an equal exchange of power with their white counterparts. So they know the usual thing. Black men, they don't care about anything but, um, you know, getting a seat at the table in exchange of power. But never mind. All the black, you have Diamond and Silk, um, Candace Owens, Stacey Dash, Crystal Wright, tons of black women conservatives as well. Like, there's no need to gender war it. Like, there's always been a conservative coon class, but these people always have to kind of push the message and push the tribalism. And somebody responded, ironic considering the folks who were perfectly willing to exploit the deaths of black people for millions were the queer black women behind BLM, right? And he adds, I would never insist that their actions paint the character of all who identify as queer black women. But then again, I'm not virtue signaling white men trying to sell them my OnlyFans. So what do I know? I think that whatever. But this person then responds, and this is the new talking point, right? So this person, they go by the name Damani, but they're at Redacted Obscure. It goes, here's another dog whistle from your favorite black cishats to recruit homophobes to persecute queer folks. Now, here's the thing, these people nonstop were wanting the credit of Black Lives Matter to be attributed to black queer women. All the time, they're like, "We're leading this, not you black cishet men. Shut up, sit down. You don't get to take credit for this. Black queer women are on the front line. We lead BLM. You guys do nothing. We're the ones, in charge of everything." And we started Black Lives Matter and everything. So now that this guy is doing what they wanted, which is giving black queer women credit for um black queer folks credit for what BLM did, now they're saying, oh, you're doing a dog whistle trying to get homophobes to persecute queer folks. And it's like, no, you only want the credit for this when it was looking like a good thing. Now that people pointed out you guys were stealing mansion money, that BLM stood for buying large mansions. Now you're like talking out both sides of your face. Now you're saying, oh, to point out that, like, pretty soon they're gonna start saying that straight black men that Black Lives Matter, like, they will lie right to your face. They're gonna start saying that at some point. You're gonna find some way to find one straight black man there and say he was bullying and making people do the whole thing. But then the person adds, he's such a fucking tyrant and moron. He doesn't even realize it was the same queer black woman that took BLM to task. Laughing face emoji. And it's like, who the fuck? Like, they're lying in real time. So basically, they've made this new narrative. It was actually queer black women who took Black Lives Matter to task. And it's not even a total lie, because what happened is they'll find one or two queer black women who did say that and not act like they were the ones. So now there's a new way to self-esteem manage and present and do presentation and bask in reflective glory. It's like, okay, we're on the verge of looking bad. Let's find someone else who looks like us, who is on the right side of the argument, and now signal boost them and bask in that reflective glory. So now we can now say this. So now Black Lives Matter, the national organization, when it was doing good, was the poster child for how great black queer activists are. And that has become scamming. You're not supposed to point out that they're black queer. You're supposed to find the one person amidst the sea of straight black men and straight black women and, um, whatever, who were saying that it was bad, or white right wingers, all this stuff, and culture, everybody. From all those, you pick the black queer people you can most identify with and say they were the ones bringing it to task. And it's so stupid because this specific person, this specific account was one of the people warring with us and fighting with us forever on behalf of Black Lives Matter when we were saying that they were scammers. And that's what I'm saying. This is not just a simple mistake. This person is actively lying. Like, they know from firsthand experience. We've argued with this person for over the years many times, and that's what's crazy about the lie. They'll lie in plain sight with a paper trail and electronic trail right there. Like, they lie shamelessly. And if you're not, and most people just don't lie that blatantly and ridiculously. So it's easy to believe these people because you won't even believe it's possible. Like, that's too big to be a lie. But no, they will lie to your face. It's crazy. So yeah, it's really freaking annoying. Um but I ended up tearing into this person because it was driving me nuts. I was like, "You're so intellectually dishonest. Like, no one's gonna believe what you tweeted except people." And other people are saying the same thing. Like, it's a blatant lie. Someone's like, "You can't even name those people. Show evidence of queer black women back in 2014 calling BLM like Darren Seal." That's when people, like, everyone's just calling it as a lie. But these people, that's how crazy they were. And some people even pointed up receipts of um how people were talking out both sides of their face. these are people attacking straight black men. Um, when this guy was calling out BLM, this queer black woman who was part of that whole scene and hung out with Uranium, she's like, Darren Seals is a prime example of why I think black men are the utmost of trash for calling out BLM as scammers. I can't wait for the date we drag his ass in the street. Cannot wait. If I really quit movement work, it'll be because I am that will be why. Um, I'm not getting killed by the hands of a black man. You know, they're saying that straight black men who criticize Black Lives Matter are gonna physically kill all of us. He is so jealous, and with that much jealousy, there's dangerous. You know, so I'm so people are so jealous over visibility that is now too dangerous. I am way more terrified of my own people than these racist ass police. This woman, a few years later, got a documentary made about her called "Whose Streets," about how she was in the forefront of BLM and and the Ferguson uprisings. This woman has said that black men scare her more than the police, and that anyone who criticizes Black Lives Matter for scamming is just jealous. So, but that's like the new narrative now. The new narrative is um actually Black Lives Matter is not a queer organization. That's number one. Number two, black queer women were actually the ones who called out the fakeness. Uh, not straight black men. Straight black men just want to blame gay people or whatever. And then the third thing is, hey, don't worry about the national. Let's worry about the local chapters who we've always supported. You know, us blue checks, we never liked the national. We always thought they were scammers. We like these guys, the locals, even though you never heard them talk about the local chapters before this, before they made this new narrative, and they were all in bed with these people. Like, look at this thing here. This came out. This is a TV show that came out like a year ago, but it was filmed back when the narrative was still popular, before Black Lives Matter was a scam. And it's called The Bust Down. It's got Sam J. It's got this guy, um, Jack Knight, who unfortunately killed himself. It's got the guy Chris Red from it's got Chris Red from Saturday Night Live. But check this out. This black guy is getting sexually molested by his boss. It's played for comedy. I don't know why it's funny. And they make this. He wants to do a movement for his own molestation, and they usually take a shot using the popular talking points at the time. But look at what they say. Tell me if you can hear it. The volume is not great. Tell me if you can hear it. How's the sound on that? Yeah, yeah. They assume everyone has no principles and will do the same in their place. But yeah. Hold on. Check this out. So you can't hear it well, but you can see the subtitles. But the guy's bringing up that they have to bring light to the situation of their boss being a creep, and this guy is saying, we need to start a movement, but where can we find somebody?" And he's basically talking about himself. And what he's trying to say is, straight black men always want to put themselves at the front of movements and then profit off of them, right? So he's kind of talking about himself, and this is the parody of what straight black men are supposedly like. And again, it's all projection. He's, that's what he wanted all along. Oh, yeah. So these are the people that wanted the credit for Black Lives Matter. That was filmed and recorded before the scams became too undeniable before the houses came out. So in their own words, they wanted credit for this stuff, and it was a big joke to them. They were so proud to jump behind. But now they're like, how dare you say we were behind Black Lives Matter? We were the ones calling it out. Like that does not look like you were calling it out to me. You know, um, yeah, exactly. They're the main victims of police brutality, but they're being painted as. But that's part of the narrative that black men are the main victims of police brutality, but they don't do anything but sit down and wait for queer black women to take charge. Even though in reality, there were plenty of straight black men like Darren Seals and people on the ground who were fighting on the ground, and they actively came in and jumped in front of the cameras and hijacked the attention and took it with them. So it's like they know there were black men on the ground because they were there jumping in front of them, photobombing and stealing the movements. That's what makes it even funnier that they're spreading this narrative. They're basically, yeah, exactly, just some regular black working class people in the field drinking 40s. Yeah, that's how real blue collar black people act. They still drink 40s. Like it shows the contempt for regular black people, that show. Um they portray blue class black people with jobs in the field drinking 40s like losers, right? Like they got the stereotypes from like the 90s, like who even the like, who still drinks 40s, and they talk like woke Twitter people, talking about the origins of BLM. Yeah, that's why people are so bad, because even they can't step outside their own skins for like a second. Like everything they do has to be like building up their own image and building up their own brand. That's all that scene was, and now they want to act like they didn't say that. I don't think they're making things better for black people. All these people care about them is themselves. They're making it better for themselves, so that's fine. I mean, they can't say that, so they got to say they're doing stuff for black people. But all they care about is themselves. They don't even care about other black queer people or black women. You know, that's funny. That's funny. Um, yeah. So it's messed up because these people are losing their time in the sun. People are tired of all this stuff. They lost their moment. The whole new wokeness is going away. Is going to be a reactionary turn. We keep saying it, and I think it's already happening. Is a recession. Money's drying up. There's not people going to be throwing money at their silly projects. So this is like the last gasp of a desperate class. But anyway, going on, the individual chapters of BLM and other affiliates, however, had long been ringing alarm bells, and this is what I mean. Like now they're going to point themselves as the people who are actually all along sounding the alarm against Black Lives Matter, the national organization. Even though I just showed you a perfect example of these people as recently as last year making shows, still taking credit for Black Lives Matter, the national organization, right? Uh, Notably, Ferguson, the greater St. Louis area, which was touted as the birthplace of the BLM movement, was never part of that network. And then she goes, and then they go and quote Janetta, LZ, who's still part of the group. Like, you know how many people in St. Louis? Darren Seals was doing it first, but is dead. But there's still a lot of people left who were part of E-Ray's camp, like Tory Russell and a bunch of other people who have forever been bashing these people. There's the people that crashed D-Ray's book signing in Ferguson when he came back home, to call him out for capitalizing off their movement and having never been back to Ferguson except to push his book, when the anniversary came. And all these people, why are you going to Janetta Elzy, D-Ray's pal, who was one of the people who helped hijack the movement? Like, she's from Missouri, supposedly, but she's not part of the original grassroots movement there. So even here, they're still finding a backdoor way to protect their class and their tribe. So now they're gonna say that Janetta Elzy. I think about all the people in St. Louis who are outside who don't have access to any of those resources, Janetta. But you were rocking with them. You weren't when Black Lives Matter was stealing the money. You weren't with the Darren Seals and those people. You were rocking with D. Ray and BLM. So why do you now get to be the spokesperson for people who were never rocking with them? Why are you being interviewed in this article? You know, um, you were totally rocking with them. You know, you were part of the clique. Yeah, it's like what when did this happen that you were part of the grassroots that were calling them out? It's ridiculous, you know. And I'm sure if we look, we'll find pictures of you rocking a Black Lives Matter T-shirt. I'm sure it won't take hard to find, you know. So, but then what she's gonna say is, "Oh well, I was rocking it for the organization, not for the. I wasn't rocking it for the movement," which then leads to the question: why were you not ever calling them out before this? You know, why were you wearing a shirt for a movement that was led by people who were so not trustworthy? You know, so it's a total load of crap. But it shows how they're still playing games and they're still trying to pull off the grift. They're still trying to keep the eyes. They're trying desperately to keep their eyes off the people who were really calling this stuff out. So then it continues. On November 30th, 2020, a highly publicized statement, which is interesting because publicized by who? Their crowd didn't publicize it. All the Black Blue Checks ignored the statement when it came out, criticizing the umbrella organization signed by 10 individual chapters. So this is the same letter we're talking about, you know, where the 10 chapters called out. Now, I looked in this woman's publishing history and her Twitter history. I may have missed it, but I did not see any place where this woman was signal boosting this letter when it came out. Because at then people still were betting on the bigger horse, which was Black Lives Matter Global Network, right? Yeah, so it's kind of crazy. Like you're talking about this widely publicized, but not by you. It was only the right wing people were publicizing this thing that you were calling it right wing divisiveness. You guys were never talking about it, never saying jack about it, including you. Even though now you're claiming that you were on the side of these poor local activists, just screaming into the ether, being ignored. You know? Yeah, it's it's crazy. Hold on, let me keep going. Um, Later, mothers of slain victims of police violence, Samaria Rice and Lisa Simpson, would put out a statement listing the BLM Global Network in colors along the list of leaders they would like to stop monopolizing and capitalizing our fight for justice and human rights. It would be disingenuous to imply that there were no allies whatsoever during this time period for the organization. Trayvon Martin's mother, Sabrina Fulton, honored the trio in 2020. So look, even in this takedown, she's still soft selling it a little bit. She's like, let's be clear though, there were still other mothers who did like Black Lives Matter. Trayvon Martin's mother honored in 2020. Um, Mike Brown's mother, is what I assume this is, published a statement on her blog in support of colors after the BLM 10 letters, and a bevy of other influential activists and scholars in the world of police violence and abolition signed a public statement supporting Black Lives Matter in response to the letter, both within and outside the BLM apparatus. So she's trying to have it both ways, even while still trying to get on the right side. They're still trying to soft shell, like, but let's keep in mind this for balance, which is funny how balance only really matters when it's time to kind of protect themselves, you know? Like for a Sean King takedown, they would not post all the contradictory evidence that he wasn't scamming. And again, I'm not supporting Sean King. I don't really care about him, but it's about the double standard, right? However, more cap chapters resigned and publicized the reasons for doing so without much mainstream coverage. Um, you're in the mainstream. You could have done this. All your friends are in the mainstream. You're a writer, and so are all your friends. This is like when Kamala Harris posted a tweet. Someone has to do something about this, and people are like, "Bitch, you're the vice president." Like, why do we have people like AOC and whatever tweeting like normies about stuff like they're not like? Why are you talking about no mainstream coverage for something when you write for the mainstream? She talks about Black Lives Matter, Inland Empire, um, and they're stepping down from stuff. A second and lesser known letter from the BLM 10 with a few more chapter signees was published in June 2021 called Tell No Lies After Color's Resignation. In it, critiques are more detailed and pointed, elaborating that the argument is beyond any individual actor, but that BLM has come to represent the nonprofit industrial complex it originally purported to subvert. Because BLMGN was not engaged in direct organizing, part of it reads, it had resources available to do other things such as engagement media, foundations, and power brokers of the systems we are fighting against to protect our local work as their own. And then this is the amazing part. People were unwilling to believe or embrace the most marginalized and principled voices within the apparatus, meaning the local chapters, until the crisis became too big to ignore and it became easy for the right-wing media to exploit that fracture. She's seriously talking about people being unwilling to believe or embrace these local chapters until it became too big to ignore. That's her. She's only writing this because it's become too big to ignore. The White Lives Matter sweatshirt, all this stuff has made it. Like, these people have no idea that people can see. You ever see those kids who play hide and go seek and they're just so like young and dumb? They'll like hide their head behind a tree and think that you can't see their body. Like they'll get caught every time. Like they think they're invisible once they like hide their face. That's what these people are like. These people lie, and they lie in one place and think you can't see everything else. Like they think everyone else is like that dumb or something. So yeah. Now suddenly the oppress. So now suddenly it's about white people and right wingers and the oppressors keeping people down by ignoring all the local chapters in favor of the national network, and not the fact that it's you guys who are put in charge in every mainstream publication of the black writing. The white people don't want to touch the black writing anymore because you guys have said representation is all that matters, and white people aren't supposed to speak on everything. Standpoint epistemology, you have to be of an identity to write about it. In all the mainstream organizations, the people who do the Black Lives Matter beat are people like you. And none of you wrote about this because I was monitoring you at the time. I was researching this thing for years, and I always had to go to right wing sources or conservative sources to get the full picture. You guys were always either ignoring this or minimizing it. So, this idea that someone else was the one doing the ignoring, and you're kind of making it seem like it's white people and the right wing who control media ignoring this stuff. It's like, no, you were delegated that beat and you used that to run interference for these people. You were the one ignoring these local activists until it became too big to ignore and the right wing exploited the fracture. So the response from BLMGN to these accusations continues to be opaque, and this is something weird they do in articles. They always put quotes to people they like or their friends, even if it doesn't fit. In Freedom Dreams, The Black Radical Imagination, Robin D.G. Kelly writes, without new visions, we don't know what to build, only what to knock down. We not only end up confused, rudderless, and cynical, we forget that making a revolution is not a series of clever maneuvers and tactics, but a process that can and must transform us. What do they have to do with the rest of the article? Why is it even there except to let us know that you read Robin D.G. Kelly and to name drop him and to give his book a plug? How did that enhance the article at all or illuminate anything? What does it add to anything? Okay, whatever. The phrase Black Lives Matter gave many people a maxim by which they could easily affirm their humanity in a world that was fighting to deny its basic dignity. And that impact shouldn't be understated. Absent intentional work, however, there doesn't seem to be much infrastructure in place to prevent a rapidly growing movement to become lopsided, remain turgid at the top, while on the ground resources await updates and resources. Okay, that's fine to bring up now, but they're down to like 10 local chapters or something. Like about 3/4 of the people have left. They're a joke. Everybody knows what's the point of doing this now? It's over. Like, you're doing this to protect your own ass. Like, if you really cared about any of this stuff, you would have sounded this alarm when it mattered. You know, the game is over. The credibility is done. The white people won. Black Lives Matter accomplished its mission of subverting and messing up all that energy and wasting it. And people will be so skeptical the next time a movement happens. Like, the damage is done. But anyway, let's go on. Tragically, BLM GNF, the organization, has become a corporate Leviathan business used to engage in racial capitalism post Floyd's murder as a substitute for accountability, equity, and reparation. Still, it is but one organization in the mass movement fighting for Black lives. So it's like, but don't worry about that. It's just one organization. It was the biggest one, and it had the lion's share of the. Don't try to act like this is just a small apple or bad actor in a larger good umbrella. Because like she's still trying to protect her scene and her movement. She's trying to isolate the rot and preserve her own thing. So yeah, it's still just one organization. The call for our liberation, however is phrased, cannot be dismissed by the Candace Owens and Kanye West of the world. And again, remember I said the other half of self-esteem management, in addition to like the affirmation of self and tribe, is taking down the enemies. This is really about minimizing Candace Owens and Kanye West and not letting them become the face of what they should have done a long time ago. So they want to really make it about focus on the real thing, taking down Candace Owens and Kanye West. The smaller chapters were always focused on building locally with on the ground grassroots organizing, even when they were left with limited resources. Okay, but you guys weren't fucking with them until now. Now you guys read this. All you guys cared about all along were local chapters. You guys never fucked with local chapters. All the time you guys were rocking with the big three at the top, because those are the ones that were getting deals with Warner development deals. Those are the ones who are gonna be able to give you work and hook you up and getting like Eyes on the Prize installment documentaries and all that stuff. And the fight for Black lives remains relevant. Now that enough time has passed and Trump is out of office, companies have abandoned the pro BLM rhetoric. Pro police narratives are just as aggressive as ever, and conversations over basic civil rights must not be countenanced. But okay, why has it died? Like, take some of the blame. A lot of it's died because of cynicism over what Black Lives Matter has become, what Shaun King, what D. Ray have become. They just see people getting no justice on the ground, but the people at the top, the grifters at the top, getting those houses, podcast deals, development deals, all this stuff. It's not just about racism that the pro BLM rhetoric. Like, maybe companies have abandoned the pro BLM rhetoric because they donated millions to buy somebody a house. Maybe pro police narrative is just as aggressive as ever because Black Lives Matter dropped the ball, didn't do anything to fight it. If anything, they've set the discourse back. Significant and sustained socio-political change is a daunting task that requires immense rigor. The only scam is believing that you can have a radical revolution funded by your oppressor. Black Agenda Report, people like us, black leftists, black so-called hoteps, have been saying for the longest time you can't trust these people because they're funded by the Democrats and the corporations or whatever, and y'all were the ones going to bat for these people, writing in organizations owned by white people, writing in white owned media. Even the black sites you guys write for are white owned. And now you're the ones going to lecture us like, you silly Negroes. Do you believe that you could have a radical revolution funded by your oppressor? It's again, they will steal your shit and then help you look for it. Like, they did all this stuff. They're the ones who most claim that, we can trust a fake radical revolution that's funded by our oppressors, and now they're going to lecture us with our own rhetoric. Yeah, it's yeah. So that's the thing. So now the new talking point is the local chapters. Local chapters. A couple of things. First off, a lot of local chapters stuck with these people through thick and thin, and they still have some local chapters. So this idea that the local chapters are 100% innocent angels, just doing the best they can, and this one little anomaly, the national chapter, some of the national chapter that created the whole thing is an anomaly, and the locals are the norm. A lot of these locals accepted BLM money, they accepted some of the access, and they um still rock with them to this day. So yeah, a lot of local chapters are good. Those ones have left. Some of them have never been bad, but a lot of them have gotten to beeps with some mothers of the movement as well. It hasn't all been roses. There's been instances of corruption in some of the local ones as well. But for the so-called good ones, if you're keeping their name, you don't have credibility. You can't keep their name and still claim to be against it because the rot is too deep, and you're doing it because you want some of that residual clout. You don't want to give up on the name yet or whatever, and it's ridiculous. Yeah, the article did not mention Darren Seals a single bit. Didn't mention Tori Russell. Didn't mention anybody. Just mentioned one of their own, Janetta Elzy, who I think has fallen out with the rest of them. So she's against them now because she fell out with the rest of them. She's not in the inner circle anymore. Um, yeah. So yeah, you guys have never been signal boosting these local activists. Now you won't shut up about it. Like, you didn't talk about this until Kanye West and Candace Owen platformed it way too much. It's too late now. The four houses have been bought, and who knows what else. More scams have come out. Um, and it just keeps happening. It just happened again. One of the only people listed on the BLM taxes, uh, this guy. How do I close this big thing on the top? This is freaking annoying. God, these sites are so spammy. Black Lives Matter executive accused of siphoning $10 million from BLM donors. An executive at the Black Lives Matter network has siphoned off $10 million from donors. This just came out September, like 2 months ago, and he's one of the three people on the taxes. Um, so his name is Shalamaya Bowers, and he was big in the organization, one of the only three. So, and his salary, before you even get to the money he stole, his official salary was $2 million in 8 months, and um, so he was officially paid like $2 million, and he stole like an extra 10 million. And yeah, he's a queer black man along with um Patrice Cullors, and I forget who the third person is, but yeah, but now the story is queer black people are the ones who called out BLM. Um, Yeah, it's pretty interesting stuff. But yeah, but so that's the new narrative. Queer people were on the foreground. Queer people and black women were in the foreground of calling out BLM, while the cisheads did nothing. The black men were just twiddling on their thumbs, or they called them out for the wrong reason. They're only calling them out because of homophobia. We're the first ones to call them out for actual scamming. Um, After everyone else already called them out and the proof was already had, and we spent years defending them. Um, but yeah, they've rewritten history. It's number one. Number two, it's all about the local chapters who are innocent angels. And we were always on the side of the local chapters, even though you can't find a single tweet of ours ever talking about these single local chapters. But you can find a million of tweets of us signal boosting the big three and trying to get put on with them. It's a really funny thing. But yeah, um, that's pretty much it. That's all I have to say. Thanks for joining. Appreciate it. And yeah, get the likes up, get the donations up, man. I see people streaming on here and you know getting hit with all these donations, and yeah, help us support this show. Pay for this increasingly good equipment that we are getting to do these streams. If you go to the original streams we used to do, it were a lot jankier looking than this. So yeah, everything helps. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all I have to say. Get those likes up, thumbs up, leave those comments, do whatever you can. Definitely appreciate it. Yeah, so one last thing here. Someone said, why do they stick by this anti-straight black man narrative even when it's failing? You know what I would say? I'll say a couple of things. It's not totally failing because I mean, it's getting diminishing returns, but look at the media and the activism. Look at how the Democrats talk. Everything is black women, black women, black women. So it's not totally failing because black men have been kind of excluded a lot from media or minimized, straight black men. So they've been able to secure themselves a lot of work and political patronage and good political gigs by kind of making black women the face of the black community, especially the progressive black community. You know, a lot of the pandering gets done specifically to them. A lot of the media deals and attention gets focused to them. So it's losing ground with a lot of people. It's diminishing returns, but they're gonna stick with it because it's worked, even if it's working to diminishing returns and people are starting to see through it and everything they do fails. They can't get their shows to succeed. They all get canceled. They can't get viewership. Their activism gets exposed as grifts, but for the most part, it's been working, even though it's failing and it's losing influence. And the other thing is, when you only have one tool in your toolbox, even if the situation changes, you're gonna be tempted to keep doubling down that tool. So if all you have is a hammer, and your job is to hammer nails, and then you're hammering all the nails, and now you got nothing else to do, and now the job is to um start fixing the floor, then they're gonna try and fix the floor with a hammer. They're gonna try to like hammer the floor instead of sanding it. Like when you only have one tool, even when that tool stops working, a desperate person was just gonna double down on that tool. So this is the only tool they've developed. It's the only rhetorical tool. It's the only extensive belief system. Besides, the only thing they've built up is self-aggrandizement and shitting on strawmen. So that's all they're gonna do going forward, even though it's not gonna work because that's all they've trained themselves to know how to do, and it's too late to teach an old dog new tricks. So all they're gonna do is keep boosting the tribe and complaining about the same people they've been complaining about. So that's why I think they're gonna keep doing it. And yeah, that's it. Everybody, take care. Um, Hit us at Venmo or Cash App at Champagne Sharks to show your support. Go to patreon.com/Champagne Sharks to become a subscriber to the podcast. Look for the podcast anywhere you listen to subscription to podcasts. So check Champagne Sharks in your podcast client, or check it out on SoundCloud, and hit us at champagnesharks@gmail.com for Venmo or Cash App, and hit us in the super chat at the bottom with a dollar sign. You can give us a super comment or a super sticker. Yeah, and another thing that we have now is our site is set up so that even if you're watching this after the fact, you can still donate to the video under the video. There should be a button for supporting us. So even if you're not catching it live, you can still give us some support. So, um, yep, trying to use a hammer as a Phillips head screwdriver. Bad idea. You nailed it. All right, everybody. Take care. Be good. Later.